Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday to you. I am Dr. Nika White. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC. And I'm also the host of Intentional Conversations VodCast. And we have been expecting you, and we're so glad you're here. We're just giving it a moment or two for everyone to get settled into our virtual learning space today as we learn with and from each other. I will invite all of you who feel inclined to please go to the chat. Let us know where you are joining the conversation from today. It is always a treat for us to see the different geographies that are represented across our podcast community. And so we love for you to share where you are joining the conversation from today. I also want to just quickly recognize that today we are celebrating the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So at NWC, we truly believe in standing against discrimination against anyone that has their freedoms or their equity and equality compromised. So we really are for justice for all. I also want to welcome the live folks that are joining us from LinkedIn. Sometimes people don't necessarily register in advance and join us as part of our Zoom community, but rather they will catch us live on LinkedIn. And we are just glad in whatever capacity in which our audience finds fit to be a part of our conversation every Friday when we join here to bring you conversations where we intersect dialogue of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all the things under that big, broad umbrella with leadership and business. I also want to let you know that here at NWC, we do value disability inclusion. So we have closed caption that has been enabled for those that can benefit from it. So I want to put that into your hearing. I also want to let you know that if you're part of our Zoom community and you would like to have your cameras on, we do encourage that. We love smiling faces, but we also know that many of you join us in a capacity to where maybe you're multitasking or perhaps your camera's just, for whatever reason can't be on. Regardless, we are so delighted that you have decided to spend this hour with us, and we don't take that for granted. Once again, welcome to Intentional Conversations VodCast. We're glad you're here. Enjoy the show. Let the conversations begin. That is precisely what we're going to do at this point in time. Again, if you're joining us, you are in for a treat because this is Intentional Conversations VodCast. We also extract the audio. We make this available in podcast capacity for those who like to get their content in that way. One of the things that we love to do here at NWC is just acknowledge some of the national observances so that we all can be mindful of ways in which we can learn more, build up our cultural intelligence, and also support those in different communities that may historically have found themselves marginalized or disenfranchised. And so today is no different. You just heard me mention that this is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. I also want to let you know that this month of May is Asian American Pacific Islander, AAPI Heritage Month. And so we hope that you are doing some things to educate yourselves, to stand in solidarity with members of that community, because we need for all of us to be able to show up at our best in every space and place. I also want to let you know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I have been so delighted to see all of the many different ways organizations and individuals have been showing up to help spur conversations around mental health awareness. And so I'm a big advocate of us taking care of our mental health. It's just as important as our physical health. And so let's break the stigma. Let's keep talking about it. Let's keep encouraging mental strength by allowing people to seek out options that may help them to strengthen their mental capacity. So just want to make sure I put that into your hearing this month as well. Next month, we will be celebrating Juneteenth. And so I often like to, a month in advance, remind any of you who are looking for ways to bring meaningful experiences to your organizations. NWC would love to be of help. We would love to partner with you to curate learning experiences around Juneteenth. The message of freedom, I think, resonates with everyone. And so I would love to be a part of just entertaining just some thoughts about how we may be able to help your organization to celebrate and acknowledge Juneteenth in a very meaningful way. So reach out to us. A couple additional updates I want to make you aware of. We started something new recently. We have a lot of you that are on our email list. And so you receive all of the notifications for upcoming Intentional Conversations podcast and other things that we provide to help deepen your knowledge and understanding of all things DEIB. We have recently created a text campaign. So for those of you who would like to stay closely connected and to get your content in that capacity so that you never miss any kind of updates from us, we would love to have you join. You can scan that QR code and we will be happy to add you to the list. We promise we will only send communication like once or twice a month, and so we won't inundate you. But this is for those who desire to be closely connected in this capacity to our content. Thank you in advance. Now, you also know that we release new content every single week through our Inclusion Uncomplicated video series. This week, we released a video entitled Useful Action. I want to remind you of this as a resource that we make available to our community. If you want to be always alerted and aware of the new videos that release every single week, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and the QR code on the screen will allow you to do just that. Now, it does me a great pleasure to give you a heads up for what you have to look forward to in the remaining weeks of Intentional Conversations for our VodCast. And May 24th, it's going to be an exciting time because we have a chance to welcome Paul Ladipo. And in that Intentional Conversation VodCast, we're going to discuss the origins of the anti-DEI movement, the 21st century racism, and also what Paul refers to as nice racism, and butchering the term woke. If you don't follow Paul's content, it's really rich, it's really deep, and we are all in for a treat to have him as our co-host on Intentional Conversations on May 24th. So I hope that you will join us for that conversation. And then rounding us out at the end of the month, Casey Ariel Tobias will be joining us, and we're going to be discussing the state of Black women-owned businesses, the legal landscape around DEI, and particularly Casey's going to bring perspective on implications on all race-based initiatives that aim to close access gaps, and then also the pathways to financial activism and social entrepreneurship. So I really look forward to that conversation as well, and that will round us out for the month of May. Wow, we're almost halfway through the year. Can you all believe that? This time, it does me great pleasure to give a formal introduction of today's guest co-host. And if you've been a part of our podcast, you know that I love to take a moment just to read their official bio. I think it's critically important for our audience to know the accolades, the credentials, the experiences in which our guest co-hosts show up to these conversations. And so today will be no different. I am very delighted to be able to welcome Amber Ontiveros, and she is a longtime civil rights advocate. She served in advisory roles at the U.S. Department of Transportation for both the Bush and Obama administrations, and she now runs Ontiveros and Associates, specializing in change management, policy development, executive, and spiritual coaching. She is joining the conversation today from Oregon, so it's really, really early for her, and we are grateful. So I'm going to ask our community, while I stop sharing my screen, to find those accolades, those emojis, those reactions, words of affirmations, whatever it is, and I want you to share that into the chat so that we can let Amber know that we are so delighted for her to be here with us today. Welcome, Amber. I'm going to give you a chance to greet this audience in your own way. And one of the things that we love to do here at NWC as part of our tradition is we want to ask that you please share something with us that we would not know from reading your bio, which we just did, or even from looking at your LinkedIn profile. And so welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited. A little bit about me. I'm queer. I'm a woman of color, obviously. I follow my heart and I love studying consciousness. This conversation today is really about science and consciousness.
Science and consciousness. I love that. So we are delighted to jump right in, and I cannot wait for our audience to be able to hear from you. And, I said at the start that today, NWC, we're recognizing the Stand Against Discrimination, this International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. And so I do want to encourage us all to empower our workplaces with continuous learning opportunities by offering some workshops and resources and training to help foster that sense of empathy and skill development. And so I want to start off with you just telling us a little bit about your journey and how in which you show up to this work. And specifically, tell us about what it was like to found your organization and a little bit more about the services that you offer.
Sure. So when I first started doing this, I didn't know what I was doing. I grew up poor in Arizona, and I accidentally went to college, and I got lucky. I accidentally met a Black senator here, and she accidentally scooped me up and saw something in me that I didn't know existed. So my background is in policy. I worked for a Black senator and worked in the legislature for many years. Then I worked as a lobbyist for a lobby firm, and then the head of the transit agency, who was the former deputy director for the Environmental Protection Agency, was an advocate for environmental justice. And he saw me and he asked me to come work for him as his policy advisor, which I did. I worked for him for 10 years. And he asked me to do public speaking on the work that we were doing, and I did. And a former Clinton appointee saw me in the audience and suggested that I may have a great opportunity to go work for the Department of Transportation someday. And so there was an opportunity. I applied and I luckily was selected, and I used all of those skills to then create my firm to help others learn from what I learned nationally, which is
Mm,
how agencies succeeded and how agencies failed. And I wrote federal civil rights law. I then investigated agencies for discrimination. And the conversation on the 31st with the woman will be fascinating, because I worked on the federal law that creates race conscious programs. So that'll
mm.
be a fabulous conversation. So
Oh,
cool.
well, great. Yeah, no, I hope that maybe you will join us when Casey, Ariel Tobias will be on the 31st. So thank you for bringing that connection point to the conversation. So your work is very fascinating, and I can tell just from some of our conversations before even the top of the hour that is something that you're really drawn to and you're really passionate about. You have an upcoming program that I want you to share with our podcast community. It's called Heal the Four Woundings, and it's a resilience training. And it sounds very intriguing. So I would love for you to explain what the four woundings are and how they impact individuals and society.
Yeah. So I created a program, Heal the Four Woundings, because I didn't understand, why was I so unhappy with me?
Mm,
And why is it that I would work with my clients who were all white, and they would hire me and they would say, I want you to create this most innovative something, top-notch something. I would create it, I would give it to them, and then I would get crickets. And I couldn't
yeah.
understand. And I started to think, is there something wrong with me? And this has to do with a spiritually transformative experience that happened to me, that woke me up, and it cracked my consciousness. And that experience led me to follow some and gain some tools. So I studied the neuroscience of unconscious bias, and I studied consciousness. And the program that we're seeking funding for, we're getting funding for, is about these four woundings that live within me, and they live within you, and they live within the white man who was angry over Black Lives Matter. And here are those woundings. The woundings that live within me are, I am not worthy. I am not enough.
Mhm.
I have to win, and I don't have enough. And what's actually happening, based on studying the science and using these techniques, is our past trauma, in my case, having been raped, having been discriminated against multiple times. Still, those past woundings show up in your present day experience quickly because of a self-serving bias. So what's happening with the man who's getting mad over Black Lives Matter is this. He's seeing you, Nika. Oh my gosh. There's something amazing about Nika. If Nika matters, I don't matter. That's
Mm,
based on the belief that I'm not worthy. And then he's believing I am not enough because he's comparing himself to you, Nika. And he's then believing I have to win because in the past I didn't have enough resources. It's happening so fast because the brain is applying this self-serving bias onto the present day experience. And then here's the other thing that I realized, Nika. When I get angry with the racist, I'm agreeing with him. The wounding within me is happening so fast that my brain is believing him. And it's
mm,
not real. The thought that is playing in your mind is not real. So,
mm,
in order to understand what's actually happening, you have to use other techniques to slow down the mind in the present moment so that you can soothe your emotions and that you can understand the belief that's in the unconscious mind that's resulting in the belief is creating the thought that's creating the emotion that's creating the action. So you have to trace it back so that you can then heal that wounding so that when you show up with your clients, you can help them see their wounding too. Because what's actually happening is they're giving us a compliment. They're saying there's something so amazing in you that doesn't live within me. I want to be you, and I'm afraid of you. And so that we help them and not lose our power, we need to self actualize ourselves, take back our power. You heal.
mhm. So Amber, I'm listening to you share your approach to this work, and it is very intriguing. I'm curious about how you attract your clients. I would imagine that there has to be a certain appetite for even going through a process of interrogating our own habits, our own thoughts, our own beliefs, right? Before we can transform that into a way that's healthy and that's equitable and that's centering humanity. And so tell us about your audience, your clientele, and how do you go about attracting them?
Mm. So my clients find me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm an expert in the policy development that I do, and the approach that I take is a loving, non-judgmental approach to
Mm-hmm.
both myself and to others. And because we develop policy and change management, I take them where they are to where they can stretch to, knowing that it's not where we would like them to be, but knowing how far I can take them without breaking them.
Yeah. Can you give us a for instance? I'm a visual learner and I want to be able to understand like what does that look like in practice exactly? I mean, you've certainly expounded upon the general philosophy of like the heal the four woundings. And by the way, you do have an ebook, and we did share that into the chat. So I want to bring that to everyone's attention. But help connect the dots between the policy work and the this philosophy of heal the four woundings.
Right. Okay, let me give you a very specific example. So I had a client that I won't say who it was.
Sure.
They had us develop an equity framework.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
long story short, halfway through, the language troubled them. And what ended up happening was some of their staff ended up doing, what typically happens, which they rewrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was I sat down with them. And now this is an approach. This is a philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down with them and I come to the table first being vulnerable. I don't expect them to come to the table with vulnerability. I come to the table with empathy, compassion, and love. So I sat down with them and I do this technique called mirroring, which I
Mm-hmm.
explain to them. So, I know you want to create this policy for me. And I know sometimes the language that we use can be different than the language that you use. The question is, did you rewrite the policy so that you could understand it, or did you write it for me? And
Mm-hmm.
I helped them understand through the conversation, and through we meditated at the beginning, doing breath work, staying calm, staying present, asking questions in a self-inquisitive manner. They were then able to see that they rewrote the work so that they could understand it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what's happening is I have one consciousness that thinks and hears in a certain way, and they
Yeah.
have another. And I helped them. I literally even said that, which is the document you wrote is for your consciousness. It is not for mine. Therefore, if you put that document out, it will attract to your consciousness, but aren't you
Yeah.
trying to speak to me? And
Mm-hmm.
through that conversation, they were able to understand, you're right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I helped them understand is, why are they doing that? And why, in the past, why did I get mad when they changed my work? So they would change the work because they believe they have to compete with us to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get upset because they would change my work, which, and because they're trying to speak to me. And it's the same for woundings.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
Mm-hmm.
get mad because I would think, what? Am I not worthy? That's why you hired me. Am I not enough?
Yeah.
And then be like, well, if you want to talk to me, I have to win. But it's the same thing that they're thinking because they've internalized the fear too. They think that
Yeah.
they're not enough compared to us also.
Yeah. It's interesting because oftentimes we'll hear, these cliches around when you really want to try to go after a common goal collectively, you have to make sure that the mindset is not, it requires someone to lose and someone to win, but that we all can arrive at a place of being winners and benefiting. And that's what I'm hearing a little bit in the approach that you take. Your work definitely blends elements of change management, policy development, but then also this spiritual coaching. And so I want you to share with our community how you see these disciplines intersect and what unique insights that your approach and your expertise can bring to your clients.
So humans, this thing right here, the mind, is what creates policy. It is the mind that creates the workforce programs. It is the mind that creates the products and the services and the pricing structures. This is why discrimination is embedded in all of them. So this is why I changed my company to incorporate these tools into every aspect of what we are doing. Because me, a person of color, also can't come to the table to help people change if I'm always triggered by someone who doesn't know they're acting from the past.
Mhm.
I have to be self-actualized so that I can see what's happening as it's unfolding. And the other thing is, I don't want to project my past trauma onto my present day experience because I'm believing my thoughts. I want to
Mhm.
choose how I want to feel. I want to choose how I want to be. And the emotions are our signal to ourself. It is our spiritual signal to ourself. It is our higher self, our soul that's saying, Amber, wake up. So when you get mad, when you get triggered, it's saying to yourself, wake up. So I incorporate these teachings throughout my work because we can't separate who we are as beings.
Mhm. Mhm. So you mentioned, as we were chatting before, having a near-death experience and how that has certainly led to your healing journey. How did that experience and shape your perspective on life and your approach to your work?
So this thing that happened, it completely changed me. So in 2016, I have a rare disease. In 2016, I had a seizure. One minute I was in my body, and the next minute I was floating through the ceiling. And I went into pure blackness. And on the it was like a tiny pinprick of light, and it called me. And it sucked me into this light with this expansive light, with the being of light that I knew was the infinite creator. And I called the being of light the infinite creator because it was infinite and there was nothing beyond its creation. And in those moments, I felt so much love. And I experienced everything that I had ever experienced with every person that I had ever experienced. And I knew who I really was and who you are too, which is we think we're a body and we have forgotten that we are a spark of the consciousness of God.
Mhm.
In which case, the other thing that I learned was how I had hurt people. And the infinite creator helped me see, oh, no, 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 baby. The thing that lives within you, that lives within the man that is angry over Black Lives Matter, is the same. And when I came back, I studied consciousness and the neuroscience of unconscious bias because the techniques that I use are all purposeful. Because if you are a consciousness, really, you have to use consciousness tools to change your consciousness. That's why I use meditation. That's why I use mindfulness. And that's why I use it in all of my practices because I want to be the best version of myself and I want to help my clients be the same.
Mhm. And that starts with doing the internal work to make sure that you are positioned to be able to assist your clients effectively.
That's
Yeah,
that's right.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I want to make this very practical for some in the audience who are listening in or will see the replay or catch the podcast. And for those who are thinking, I want some practical ways that I can recognize and address internal discriminations within myself, right? Considering that oftentimes it may go unnoticed if we aren't very consciously trying to understand how that could be showing up for us and the implications of it. So, what are some practical steps that you would advise people to either get into the routine or the habit of, or to consider to be able to address that internal discrimination within themselves?
Right. So here is one of the techniques that the angels gave me. It's called mindful listening, and
Mhm.
it's a technique that you use on yourself to understand what is the belief that lies in your unconscious mind. And you also are using it for emotional self-regulation,
Mhm.
compassion, empathy on yourself, and for the other person that's not acting in their true nature. So what you do is, for those that are listening on the audio, focus on your breath.
Mhm.
In that moment where you're in a challenging situation, you focus on the breath, you breathe in, you breathe out. That is the anchor to help you calm your emotions. As that is happening, you ask yourself a set of questions. The questions are for yourself. One, what would the belief be that you have about yourself that is resulting in your anger? Why are you feeling angry? Then
Mhm.
the second thing you're going to ask yourself is those same questions about the other person. And why would they show up with that behavior? And you will start to see that why someone being a racist with me, why would that make me mad? It actually has no reflection on me whatsoever. Therefore, I shouldn't be mad at all. Because now that I know that I'm worthy, now that I know that I'm enough, now that I know that I don't have to win, it doesn't matter what you think of me because I am badass. And I am so sorry for you, Mr. Racist. Now you don't get to know me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you ask these questions of yourself, and you ask the questions of the other. And why are they acting that way? They're acting that way because they're afraid of me. And when someone's triggered by you, what they're really saying is, I see something so amazing in you that I don't see in me. I want to be you.
Mhm. Mhm. What I'm curious about is this is an approach that I would imagine works for some people, but then, and there's value in there being different approaches because people kind of are driven and motivated by different things, right? So we need a level of diversity around helping to undo the harm that racism has created and continues to create this day. For those who are listening in and they're thinking about, even if I have the disposition that this person, this racist individual cannot harm me because that's their reflection, but it's not my reflection of myself. Sometimes those individuals are in our workplaces.
Yes.
Sometimes they have the influence and the power to make or break, different access for people. And so this does become a parallel path of not just the internal work for people to feel confident about themselves when they encounter some type of racist behavior, but it also becomes a question of how can I feel safe though in an environment where systems are being influenced by people that show up in that manner. And how do you reconcile for that and help people to maintain a sense of hope and confidence when they are faced with that type of situation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. These teachings are what is going to result in my answer, which is this is what I am saying is I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. Obviously, it
Of
exists.
course, yes.
What I'm saying is, how do you want to show up when it does? And how
Mhm.
I want to show up is I want to take back my power. I want to be self actualized. I don't give a what they think of me. I want to define my own value. I know I'm worthy. So the thing is safety. I determine safety. I am
Mhm.
fearless. You don't get to define me anymore. I'm done. I'm whole. I'm free. That's it. If they don't like me, thank you. Thank you for getting out of the way. For the
Mm.
one that will. No, no, no.
Yeah.
If I keep listening back to that old story, I'm still believing they get to define any aspect of my being. And you know what? It's not real. No, I determine my thoughts. I determine my feelings. It's not real. That's the power of changing your
Yeah.
mind, managing your feelings, filling yourself up with your own self love. Mm-mm.
Mhm. So now is the point in our show where I will give the audience an opportunity to also chime in with their comments or your questions for our guest co-host. You can do so if you're part of our Zoom community by using the raise hand feature that lets me know that you are willing to be invited to unmute yourself and add it to the spotlight to share directly. If you are inclined more so to present your questions or comments into the chat, that option is definitely open for you. And if you're one of the individuals who are joining today's conversation by LinkedIn Live, go to the comment section. We will bring that discussion over into our chat here within Zoom, and we will take those questions and comments and bring them to the conversation as time permits. So while maybe you're percolating on curiosities that could be coming up for you, I'm going to go to the next question just to give you a moment to think about perhaps what you would like to contribute to the conversation. So you've talked a lot about how in which, Amber, you leverage neuroscience to the approach of your work. And so I would love for you to elaborate on how understanding neuroscience can aid in overcoming such deep-rooted issues. And you have touched on this, but I want to just have you to expound a bit further for us, please.
Yes. Okay. So here's what's actually happening. The painful part of our brain that I've had to have these conversations with the infinite creator multiple times, which he needs to change this little part of us, which is so the brain, the neuroscience calls it the self-serving bias. So here's how it works. The self-serving bias is results in this. When good things happen to me, I attribute them to myself. When bad things
Mm.
happen to me, I attribute it to things outside of me. The problem is, I could be wrong. The brain is processing the information so quickly, you don't know. In which case, when I apply for a job and I don't get the job, the reason why you have this is because it's helping you overcome the challenge of not having the job so that you can get the job so that you can eat. It's an evolutionary protective mechanism. On top of that, in the back of your brain is a part of it, a system called the reticular activation system. Every single technique that I use with myself and with
Mhm.
others is positive, it's loving. Here's why. The reticular activation system holds you hostage to what you believe about yourself. So here's how it works. If you've ever driven to work and you got to work and you were like, how did I get here? That's that's the brain working on autopilot. So
Mhm.
the beliefs that you have in your unconscious mind are replaying on a play loop. That's why I said the thought is not real until you understand what the wounding is in your unconscious mind. It's going to continue to fuck you up because you're going to think the thought is real when in actuality it's a past trauma. showing up in the present moment experience. So every single technique that I use is based on plasticity, mindfulness, helps you regulate your emotions, helps increase health, productivity, changes the neural pathways. I use visualization techniques that are the exact same techniques that top performing athletes use. Why? Because the brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an imaginary one. An imaginary one can build your confidence just like a real one. All of this is to soothe you, bring you confidence and healing from the past so you can let it go.
No, thank you for expounding upon that. One of the things that you said, which really resonated with me as you were talking about self-serving bias, is that you're right. I mean, I do realize even in myself, when something good happens, we tend to want to take credit for that and kind of center ourselves for it. But then when something bad happens, we immediately are looking for what are those external factors that did not position me for success, because we don't want to internalize that it was because of ourselves that we did not reach success, whatever success, however it's defined by each person and based upon that situation. So I'm not seeing any hands raised right now, Amber. So I'm going to keep going because I do have definitely a lot more questions for you. So what techniques or practices would you recommend for individuals navigating their healing journey and overcoming past trauma, recognizing it as a critical aspect of personal growth?
Yes. So these, based on studying the science, these are the techniques that I use, and they're very specific. So mindfulness
Yes.
teaches you self-compassion, helps you regulate your emotion. There's a specific technique that I use with myself and with my clients. It's a technique of shadow boxing. It's a somatic practice. And essentially what you want to do is when you're feeling a negative one, you focus on the body sensation in the body. You don't call it, I'm feeling fear. You don't think about the thought. No, because that perpetuates it. You
Yeah.
focus on the location in the body where you feel fear, and you just focus your awareness on that. And that helps remove the feeling from the body. It heals it, because if you understand what's actually happening, your awareness is God. Your consciousness is God. So where you place your consciousness, which is love, is healing. If you're in a negative state with that consciousness, you're creating hate with that consciousness. So that's why when you talk to yourself, it should be kind. When you talk to yourself, it should be loving. And the other thing, back to the self-serving bias, I think it's important for everyone to understand that the infinite creator helped me realize was, oh, no, baby. When you fail, when you make mistakes, that is the most important time for growth.
Oh.
And here is a teaching that he gave me. Suffering. Suffering is grace. Grace is suffering. Suffering is the rising of a teacher. Love all experiences. Because when you are angry or feeling any negative emotion, it is a gift that you are giving to yourself. Your higher self, your soul self, is trying to wake you up to some false thing that you believe about yourself that's not real.
Yeah, I couldn't help but to take notice of the language you use. Love all experiences. That was really rich for me. And that definitely is akin to a growth mindset,
That's
regardless
right.
of, Yeah.
That's
Regardless
my
of whether or not we may associate some negativity with those experiences, ultimately, what we should be evaluating is the totality of the outcome. While it may have felt negative in the moment, did it propel us to a place of growth, right? That has made us better as humans. And you also talked about the my language, not yours, but like the importance of self-affirming, right? And so we hear a lot of people talk about the value of those self-affirmations and whatever habits or approach that people can place within their path to just remember how they feel about themselves and who they know themselves to be, right? And not necessarily by how people may define them. So that really, love all experiences really resonates with me. It brings me to my next question, and that is your approach to ending discrimination. It definitely centers around love. That has come out of this conversation, not just centered around love, but intentionality around driving out hate as well. So, can you share more about how love can be transformative force in societal change? We heard someone a couple of weeks ago on our podcast to share with us that it's hard to hate up close, right? And so it's bringing me back to that conversation as well. But share with us some ways that you believe love can be transformative force in societal change.
right. So one, I know Dr. King was right when he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only
Yeah.
love can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So in my book, I include a story about a tribe in Africa. And I do believe, I believe, no. I know this is what will change the world. This tribe in Africa, what they do is they believe, as I do, that wherever matter occurs, spirit may be found. And what they do is when someone, a member of the tribe, does something unbecoming of the tribe, they put the individual in the middle of the tribe and every tribal member stops. And they recount every good deed, every kind word, every loving action that member of the tribe did. What they say is they recount and remind that person into their better part of who they are. And imagine this. Who would we be if you made a mistake and you heard, oh my God, thank you, Nika, for making that mistake. You were
Yeah.
brilliant. You were kind. You were lovable. You are amazing. Now we know a problem that we can solve. It would change the reticular activation system in our mind from being a negative one of Amber, I suck ass. I am going to bully myself. I am going to believe that I have to be a perfectionist, la, 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 to knowing I am perfect exactly the way that I am. I am whole.
Mm.
It's okay if I make a mistake. It doesn't mean that I'm not worthy. I was worthy when I was born. I don't need to compete with you to win because we are both worthy.
What it reminds me of is, the big conversation around psych safety and how, in order for people to really be at a mental state to where they can feel free to try and take risk, because it may lead to mistakes, is that they're not going to be reprimanded. And to your point, you said, how often have we experienced someone thanking us for making a mistake? Probably very few, but hopefully there is a good percentage of people that can say they have experience being not shunned and shamed when they have made a mistake, because it has been the value of the growth of that mistake that all of those involved have been able to recognize. And so it definitely puts me in the mind of this like safety conversation, which I think is very relevant as well. And I would be remiss if I did not bring back to the conversation that we're in the midst of, Mental Health Awareness Month. And when I think about your approach, where we are doing this with a sense of love and with the sense of people recognizing that regardless of the noise and what maybe they could be hearing, people's perceptions are about them. What's most important is how they feel about themselves and taking control of that narrative. And so when I think about what you've shared today, Amber, it certainly brings to mind that the approach is one that I believe really helps us to lean more into the mental strength that we need to see right now,
Exactly.
because we
Exactly.
live in a very burnt out society. That's been a big conversation that has shown forth in the media and time again. And I think it's time for us to get very creative and very intentional, even more intentional
Mhm.
about ways in which we can help people to regulate their own mental strength. So I wanted to bring that to the conversation as well. So we're going to be winding down in just a moment. There's a question that I have for you, and this is a question that I was presented with once before, and I thought it was so profound, and I want to present it to you. What have you, Amber, been saying over and over again to so many different people that you feel like they aren't hearing, you want to amplify and socialize today?
While this may be controversial, racism is not about race. It's about self-esteem. So the reason why they're angry is because they're afraid of you, they're afraid of your worthiness, and it's not real. And when we get angry because we're believing them, and that's not real either. Take back your power. It's not real. We can change the world. It starts with you, and it starts by loving yourself. And then you can do anything.
Yeah, yeah. Um, your book, tell us how people can get a hold of your book. We did place the Amazon link into the website. Are there any other ways in which people can get your book?
Yes, I'm going to put the chat, put the website in the chat. It's healthefourwoundings.com. And I have an entire workbook using meditation, growth mindset, shadow boxing, many of the techniques and more are on the website. And for like $27, you can get the workbook and the book. And
Mm,
it basically gives you all the tools that I have used for myself. If you want to feel confident, if you don't want to be afraid
yeah.
anymore, if you want to take back your power and own who you really are, which is a spark of the great I am, $27, you can get it. Or you can come work with me or check out our YouTube channel, follow me on LinkedIn. We'll be putting out information about the Heal the Four Woundings resilience training coming up. My goal is to teach 120 entrepreneurs of color, specifically Black entrepreneurs, these teachings so that they can manifest the life they want.
Mhm, mhm. And we're going to place into the chat ways in which you can connect with Amber. And so we do have her book that's out there already. We will place her LinkedIn information out there and her website for you all to learn more about her firm and her work. Okay, so we're closing out, but I do want to give you a chance to have our final moments to share with our community. And what I'd like for you to share is what have I not asked you about today that you are feeling a lot of energy and passion for that you would like to share with our community?
Mm. Oh no, it's just been so fun. Been really fun. Are there any other people that want to ask me any policy questions? I'd be happy to.
I'm
I'm
not seeing any hands raised right now. I think people are really stewing on all that you've shared. So yeah,
okay.
There's some, but I do hope that you'll take a chance to kind of look at the chat. You're getting lots of, you're getting some affirmation from people who have appreciated, what you've shared today and your approach to this work. Yeah. So
Oh,
how do you,
I, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, you go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say one other thing. Because so the book is deeply personal. So this, who you're seeing, the authentic Amber, is in the book. The only way I could have showed up like this is if I had used these teachings on myself, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to be me, whatever that is, and I don't want to be afraid. So that's how I did this. And I guess I would say there's so many things I learned. I learned why I was angry and jealous of the white woman.
Mhm.
Why was I being afraid of white women? I realized because I had internalized discrimination to the point that I believed the white aesthetic of beauty.
Mm,
Why did I loathe myself? Why was I nasty? Again,
yeah.
beliefs create your thoughts, that create your emotions, that create your actions. My actions were ugly because I believed the belief. Once I got rid of the belief, no, 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 white women, you're beautiful. I don't need to compete with you to win because I
Mhm.
know that I'm worthy in and of itself. My aesthetic of beauty is just as beautiful as you with my big booty and my thick nose. Yeah. That's why I feel nothing but compassion for the racist. That's why I feel nothing but compassion for the sexist, because what the infinite creator helped me see was because he's living in his past, he doesn't get the rich experiences of knowing you. He doesn't
Mhm.
get to grow. He doesn't get to be all that he could be because he is stuck in his fear. Do you want to live in your fear too? If you don't, heal. Take back your power.
Yeah. This has been, it's definitely a refreshing reframe that I think will help a lot of people who have been maybe stuck in that anger and not doing the internal work, right? And so I love that you have brought that to today's conversation. And I do think that it's going to be of value to many that's part of this community. And so I want to thank you again, Amber. Thank you for sharing with our podcast community. I want to thank you for getting up super, super early. You didn't have to do that. And I really do hope that this community found value in the conversation today and they will seek out learning more from you. And so thank you all for joining us. Have a safe weekend. And we do hope to see you back here next Friday for another episode of Intentional Conversations podcast. Take care. Bye bye.